Greetings, YouTube. Daigahop. This is Tony Chang, also known as Tony Creator on DeviantArt. After about a week or two of procrastination, here's my video review of Garruk Wildspeaker from Magic the Gathering The Legacy Collection by Funko and Gentle Giant Studios. I'm still happy that I came across him and Liliana Vess for about $5.50 each on the same day. Anyway, I'll give him a turn around so that you can all get a better look. Garruk here stands at about 7.5 inches tall, making him taller than most Voyager-class Transformers figures. Combiner Wars Motormaster can probably stand head-to-head with him, since he's also 7.5 inches tall. Still a shame that I don't have that figure. Garruk Wildspeaker here has quite a backstory, but I'll give a brief summary for the sake of this video. As a young boy, Garruk escaped with his life from a warlord who wanted to recruit child soldiers. As a result of his act of insurrection, Garruk's father was executed by the men who served that warlord. Garruk then spent most of his adolescence in the wilderness, where he hunted, befriended animals, learned magic, and gained that impressive physique. He eventually became powerful enough to defeat the men who murdered his father, with the help of his animal friends. After Garruk got his revenge, he continued living his lifestyle, until some of his animal friends ended up dead, thanks to a certain necromancer named Liliana Vess. Garruk, not willing to stand for the death of his friends, confronted the sorceress in a temple somewhere. They fought and fought, until Liliana overpowered Garruk using enhanced dark magic. In the battle's aftermath, Garruk found that he was somehow cursed by Liliana Vess. Garruk became more and more deranged thanks to the curse. Despite many attempts to undo the curse, the damage was done. The result? Garruk Wildspeaker is now a serial killer who is out for Liliana's head, as well as the head of any sorcerer or magician who stands in his way. From top to bottom, one can tell that the makers of this figure were at their A-game when designing Garruk Wildspeaker's figure, and other figures from the same line. Just look at him! His body, his mismatched armor, and his axe are incredibly detailed. They've been sculpted with a level of detail that one would see in most Leader class or Voyager class Transformers figures. Even from behind, Garruk has a story to tell. The large tarp or shawl on his back, and the broken sword strapped to his waist. Where did that sword come from? And who did he kill to get that sword? Before we continue looking at the actual figure, let's look at his big axe, which is just as well done. The handle looks like it's been molded to look like wood, with a few brown or dark red straps tied around it. The actual axe itself looks very well done. I mean, it's been painted to look very, very worn. The axe also has a kind of a pattern that matches some areas on Garruk's armor, such as around his loincloth or breechcloth there. Again, a very, very well-made piece. Let's go over Garruk's articulation. He has he does have a ball joint in the head, but because of all of this gear on him, he can only move his head slightly left to right, like a swivel. He has a hinge and a swivel in the shoulders, bicep swivel, ratcheted elbows, which can get a little loose depending on how the elbows are positioned. Wrist swivel. And hinge. I should point out that the hinge is a little loose on this hand. I don't know if that was my fault or if this already happened while the toy was being packaged. Torso swivel. Now I'm aware that there is an ab crunch, but because of all this gear, he can't really rock his torso that much. Plus, he also has the fragile or delicate ball joint in there that I don't want to risk breaking. Ball joints in the hips, thigh swivel. For some reason, the thigh swivel is, shall we say, molded a little differently on his left leg. Double jointed knees. But because of all this gear, they can be hard to see. And all this gear makes his leg movements a little restricted, in my opinion. But there is a double jointed knee in both legs, even in this one. And finally, kind of a ratchet in the toes, as well as a swivel in the toes. Before we move on, you can clip Garruk's axe into his hand like so. But be aware that his hand can't really hold it all that well. So don't shake the figure loose while he's holding his own axe. Garruk Wildspeaker is a decent figure. However, his weakness comes from his lack of posability. I'll go over that. Because of all the gear that Garruk is wearing, his posability is limited. If you move his arms and shoulders in any way, his tarp or shawl might hinder him from having a full range of motion. Also, the legs. Because of his loincloth and whatever else he's wearing on his lower body, Garruk can't really have a full range of motion in his legs. So he can't really do dynamic poses or martial arts poses here. He can only stand and look stoic. Okay, I lied. There is one little nitpick that I should point out. These pieces are barely glued on. There has been an instance in which the gold painted piece on his left leg fell out while I was playing with him. Fortunately, I fixed that by gluing that piece back in. But beware that some of these pieces can fall out on their own. Now, the only martial arts pose that's possible for Garruk here is Shiva's pose from Streets of Rage 2. For those who are unfamiliar, Streets of Rage was a popular 2D side-scrolling beat-em-up from the 90s. Players remember Shiva for his biatching theme music and his very difficult boss fights. Now imagine this burly man performing Shiva's moves. Ugh. I'd like to take a moment to look at Garruk's face. which is very well sculpted, just like the rest of him. Why am I thinking of fellow toy reviewer Thew Adams here? Come on, you tell me that there's no resemblance. Here's Garruk standing alongside my custom-painted Liliana Vess figure. They look great here. If I had an extra $5.50 as well as extra space in my current residence, I would have bought a Johnny Goldmane as well. I'm still not a fan of Magic the Gathering, but I believe that eventually, these two foes will fight again. What a shame. Is Garruk's figure recommended? If you're a fan of Magic the Gathering, or if you like action figures of large and burly characters, Garruk's all yours if you manage to find him elsewhere. However, if you think that there are other large action figures that have better articulation and posability, feel free to skip this one. That should wrap up this review of Garruk Wildspeaker from Magic the Gathering The Legacy Collection by Funko and Gentle Giant Studios. I am Tony, also known as Tony Creator on DeviantArt. Feel free to comment and all that. Be sure to visit my DeviantArt page. I'll leave a link in the description down below as usual. Thanks again for watching. Joikin.